So, good morning. I hope you can hear me. Had a few issues, but I hope you hear me now. It's not quite what I thought it would look like today. Okay, that was a first bar negative that just set up, and I bought the FTSE, but I do have some technical issues. But let me just, I just want to put in a stop loss. So that was a first bar negative that is just set up here in the FTSE. Buying here. The low was 8228.5. So sort of any price below that is an entry signal. Have a look look at the... You got a first bar negative as well in the DAX. Okay. I got this warning here from YouTube. I don't know what is warning. I can't see what is warning. So I'm not running on Telegram or Divergent right now. So what's interesting, I'm just going to try and make the best of this. So the setup that you're seeing here is a FTSE setup called first bar negative, and I hope that you can hear me. I'm just going to try something. You know, sometimes technology can just really irk me. So as I said, let me just circle back and try and get the best out of this whilst maintaining my position. That is. So when I did the research for first bar negative in the FTSE, and I saw how well it worked, the natural thing to do would be to go, let's replicate that in the DAX index. I mean, why wouldn't you? And so I don't know if I have told you. Should probably move my stop loss. There's not. Let's just do one thing at a time here. Everything just feels like it's a little bit in molasses. What the hell's going on? Now the first bar is positive. Am I? The chart that I had moments ago looked nothing like this. Are my eyes deceiving me today? I'm sure, I'm sure I have the video to support. What? Guys, okay. Wow. I am getting a lot of comments rolling into my Telegram channel right now saying that they saw that it was a negative bar too. Well, ladies and gentlemen of Telegram, thank you, because if it wasn't for you, I think I might have checked my overnight oats going, what's in them? Bloody hell. Sorry for the language, but seriously. So we're gonna assume that I haven't completely lost my marbles just yet, and that this bar here was in fact negative at the time. Oh, some of you are saying that it was positive. I'm still going to circle back to what I wanted to say in the first place. So what I wanted to say in the first place was that this bar here was negative, and I bought right there, like right there. And and so obviously you might be thinking, or as I was thinking, well, this must work really well in the DAX index as well. And so when I did the research in the FTSE, I investigated, I think it was 2,800 charts. And out of those 2,800 charts, almost predictably, half of them had a positive bar and the other half had a negative bar. So I had about 1,400 negative bar charts. And then I went to work and said, okay, how often is it a good idea to buy below the low of a negative bar in the morning? Because you have to remember, back in the old days, the likes of John Piper and Mark Austin and Cameron Malik, great people, published research that says you should sell short below. You should bracket the first 5 minutes, and then you should buy above and sell below. I mean, even when you look at the work that John Piper did on, I think he called it the gap strategy in the DAX. I think he called it the gap. I think he called it the Kraut gap. Yeah, something like that. Kraut is a sort of an English, slightly derogative, I think, expression for the Germans. Maybe comes from sauerkraut. Which, by the way, it's very good for you. So don't mock the Germans. 9. And so when I did this research, it was almost like a conflicting experience, because it actually called for doing the opposite. So that if you did have a negative bar and it went below the low of the negative bar, instead of selling short, what the common doctrine would be, you buy. And I then began to, so I did the research in the FTSE, and I presented that about a year ago in London at the IX show. That is available somewhere on a video in my resource channel. But then I did the research in the DAX index, which is like the long, that's the long story. What I want to tell you is that I did the research for the DAX when the first bar in the DAX was negative. And for whatever reason, this bar here in the DAX is negative. And so was the FTSE before, but this hasn't changed. It didn't make, it didn't come up with the same amount of significance in the DAX index. It would have done today, I know. But, I'm so glad that I have you at Telegram telling me that you haven't completely lost. But I also get equal amount of people, like for example, there's a gentleman here called Martin, and he says, FTSE for me was positive and at no point was negative. And then Marcus is saying, mine is still negative. Just gonna move my stop loss. Okay. I apologize that I haven't got my normal software loaded here because I had to change laptops. Okay, so this is a clip that someone sent me. Do you see that? It is definitely a negative bar. Do you see that? It's definitely a negative bar. Thank you so much, Moritz. I am distracted. So I'm waiting for traditional school run now. I'm long the FTSE on a bar negative. I hope you YouTube followers are enjoying this, because yours truly was considering if he had truly lost his marbles. And so now what I'm waiting for. Now I'm changing the time frame in the DAX to a 15-minute chart. The first 15 minutes was positive. This one here, less so. FTSE, stop losses at break even. It would be nice to see the FTSE. Here's a slightly bigger chart. So the FTSE had a big sell-off as the American indices went lower, and we have just recovered that area there, which is I think it's 82.38. We're back up here again. You perhaps contemplate taking profit here. I would like to just let it run, and there's one reason why I would like to let it run. I felt that the way that the American indices were trading on Friday night reminds me, I'm gonna tell you a little anecdote now, but on Christmas Eve 2019 I was trading, and the market had been weak in the days before, but on this particular day it just fell out of bed, and seem to remember it was a Friday, but it was definitely a holiday that was coming up. And I was short the Dow, and it fell about 500 or 600 points, as did the S&P and the Nasdaq. No, by that amount of points, but it was a very weak day, and incredibly profitable for me. Then celebrated Christmas, and then on Christmas Day, I think it is, or the second Christmas Day, when the US market opened again, they opened weaker, and I thought, okay, there's probably more weakness to come, and the market recovered, and I was able to ride that recovery up. This is my important point. But then I flipped short the market, because we recovered. I think we recovered about half of what we had lost on the previous trading day. But then the market just went pardon the expression, batshit. And the Dow had its single biggest day gain of 1,150 odd points. And I'm afraid to say, I didn't trade that very well because I was short. And yes, I got stopped out, but there was something about my mindset in 2019 that was really struggling with, maybe you should flip the switch here, mate. Maybe you should actually go long, go with it. And had I done that, well, then it would have been a double whammy great. But I didn't. And so whenever I see a really weak Friday, like the one we just had last week, and come into Monday and it's a big gap up, I always remember, maybe this is the day where they're going to take everything back that they lost on Friday. It's always sort of in the back of my mind. And that's why perhaps I'm more inclined to see if I could let this FTSE run. Because I think that the market is, and I curse myself for saying this, but I think the market is deeply oversold on Friday. Yeah, I don't like to use the words oversold and overbought. It's just not really in my vocabulary. But it sneaked in today. So I have one open trade, and I think I can delete this now, can't I? No. Ah. So obviously this is what I'm hoping for, that we're going to get a decent runner in the FTSE. Now let's look at the DAX. And so here's the school run, and it will trigger along in the DAX at, I'm going to call it at 415, the high is 410. I'm going to give it a little bit more. So I want to put it in order here. I have just bought the DAX here at 415. My stop loss is going to be here at 382 minus about 5. So this bar here is the setup bar in the DAX. It's the second bar after the market opens. And what I would like to do is to be long above and short below. You could almost see that as a pivot between what do I want to be, and then in between is no man's land. I'm still keeping an eye on the FTSE, obviously. I think I'd like to show you the big picture in the DAX as well. So I'd like to compare the big picture in the DAX with the big picture in the FTSE on the hourly chart. So here's the FTSE on the hourly chart. FTSE has managed to recover up to where the market broke lower on Friday. The DAX, however, is still some distance away from achieving that. Yeah. In fact, it will take about 130 points for it to achieve that. I think I'm going to call my broker's help desk when I'm done trading and actually show them the evidence. I find that was really strange. I've never experienced that before. And I think that if it hadn't been filmed, as most brokers do, they'll just go, "Oh well, it's probably something you imagined." Like, no, I most certainly didn't. So just show you the Nasdaq chart and compare it to the FTSE chart. So this is, first you had the big spike up when non-farm payroll was released, and then you had the big sell-off. So while the FTSE has recovered that, as you see here, first push up, and then FTSE has recovered all of that. The DAX hasn't. And here's the Nasdaq, hasn't either. But there's still time, right? And why am I showing you this? Well, there are times when I trade for myself. I trade one index against another. It was actually Charlie D. I think I'd like to give you a book recommendation. Let me just I found this on Walmart in Canada. But this is Charlie D. And Charlie D, in this book, there's an interview with him, which is a transcript. It's not an interview, it's actually a talk. And that's from I'm going to show you. I was keeping an eye on my DAX that isn't performing yet. So this is something that you can find on YouTube if you're interested. But Charlie D in this speech is talking about how he's spreading. I'm sorry about this, but it does look like I'm going to get stopped out on my footsie. Yeah, stopped out. I'm just going to keep an eye on the DAX and then I can. YouTube is not responding. Okay. So hopefully this was just a retest of the lows on the 15-minute chart. So let me talk a little bit about this video. Charlie D was talking about how he would spread against, say, what the Dow Jones was doing or what dollar yen was doing. And he's talking about how he would find something that would, for him, be an anchor point. And then he would spread against it, so to speak. When the first time I saw that, I thought, okay, so what you're doing is you're going long one and short the other. But later on in my understanding of his work, I think I came to the conclusion that that's not what he was doing, because he couldn't have done. He couldn't have been in the bond pit and then scalped against dollar yen, because he physically wasn't able to execute a dollar yen position when he was in the bond pit, nor was he able to trade the Dow Jones index when he was in the bond pit. And so I came to understand and welcome people's interpretation of this. But I understood it as, right, you're seeing the Dow rally, so now you want to short bonds. So now you're not going long the Dow, you're basically just using the Dow as your reference point. I guess the English word that you could be looking for would be correlations. You would find things that correlate or inversely correlate to what it is that is your chosen instrument. And so when I show you the chart of the DAX and then show you the chart of the FTSE on the hourly chart, and I show you how the FTSE has regained everything, my normal inclination would then be, right, so there's strength in the FTSE. I know some people could argue saying, well, okay, well, maybe you should short the FTSE because it has reached its full potential. But I like to think of it as that if there's strength, then there's a tendency for that strength to continue. And then the DAX is the weak one because it hasn't been able to gain all that lost ground to the extent that the FTSE has. So therefore, because the DAX is the weaker one, I would want to look to sell short the DAX. Now, the irony here is that as I'm saying that, I'm actually long the DAX because I use a different entry parameter than just that. And then there's also the discussion, well, can you actually rely on the FTSE and the DAX moving against each other, or do they support each other? I will say this, though, there are many times where I have executed trades, say in the DAX, for no other reason than the DAX has been significantly stronger on the day than the FTSE was. And there has been times when I've seen that the DAX was so strong against the FTSE that I would, just on that merit, short the FTSE. there was a time in my career where I would do the opposite. I would go, right, the FTSE is really weak, the DAX is very strong. Let me sell short the strong one and buy the weak one, hoping for a somewhat of a, shall we say, a mean reversion, a normalization of the spread. But then the result that I had with that, and some of those of you who can remember the days of whichwaytoday.com will remember that that wasn't a terribly successful strategy. Come on, FTSE. Sorry. Come on, DAX. I'm not in the FTSE. Hand on heart, I'm not. So the broker that I use, they have an instrument that I'm actually quite a fan of, which is called the Differential Index. So you can basically trade two indices against each other. But I use it frequently for research. So if I take a less volatile day, like Friday, I don't think that the time is right for me to extensively through this. But I can't help myself to try and help you or inspire you. But I find that the index market is frequently going into a range, and if you are that way inclined, there's definitely some research to be done around being a range trader in a differential index. So what I mean by that is, if I get rid of this. So what I mean by this is that you're using the nature of the indices to, for example, if the market breaks a range, instead of thinking, oh, this one is going lower, you're thinking it's probably going to go back into the range. Or if it breaks a range, instead of thinking, oh, it's going to go higher, you're thinking it's probably going to go back into the range. And we can take another day, the day before that. And then just, of course, bear in mind that frequently the differential indices will have a big push in the morning when either index, the FTSE or the DAX, is establishing itself, but then frequently will go into a trading range. Just going to keep an eye on the DAX. So it's struggling a bit to catch a bid above the 30-minute high. I haven't done enough research to comfortably trade these against each other, but what I like about them is that the spread that you're buying and selling at is tighter than if you were to trade them individually. I seem to be struggling a little bit with. So for example, if I was going to trade the DAX versus the FTSE on two separate instruments, I would trade the FTSE at a 0.6 spread here, and I would trade the FTSE at a 0.9. And so essentially I would pay 1.5 in spread. But if I just went to the actual differential index, I would be trading it at a 1-point spread. So I could trade it tighter than if I traded two separately by the tune of 50%. 1.5 down to 1. I guess that's is that 33% or is that 50%? From 1 to 1.5, that's 50%. I imagine that from 1.5 down to 1 would be 33%. Some of the math geniuses are probably going to correct me now. I stand corrected in advance. I unfortunately keep getting warnings that the stream's current bit rate on YouTube is lower than the recommended bit rate. I can only apologize if the quality is not as good. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes break. We're being made to wait today. Someone has said, could you please put your picture at the bottom of the stream so we can see what time frame you're trading? Yes, I will definitely attempt that. I'll probably do it a little bit later because I dare not do anything right now. It feels to me as if we have entered into a long position right into the area of resistance, unfortunately. What I'd like to do is to perhaps look at the 30-minute chart and see if there's anything in particular about this area from Friday. So that was this high here. So we can reach that. Suppose you could argue that these lows here, this area here, could be resistance from a charting point of view. So the current 30-minute chart has got a high of 417 and a low of 381. My stop loss is at 377 and I have an entry at 415. So I am long currently at the right end of the chart. And so what I need now is salvation in the form of a break. Now, what's going in my favor are two things. My stop loss seems to be in a sensible place, and the trend, shall we say, sentiment is to my favor. Of course, I'm not blind to the very fact that I have just gone long, or did go long, in what turned out to be the high point of the morning. The most my position has been in profit, including the spread, is about 1.5 points. Hardly legacy stuff, I'm sure you would agree. More like grinding it out. So I would imagine that other technical analysts would look at this chart and say, this area here is support. That support was broken, so you can expect this area of prior support is now, the classical resistance. So, okay, well, you kind of have to respect that argument, even if I am on the other side of the argument. What you're seeing here during this very sharp sell-off here is that the low of this bar and the high of this bar, they have no overlap. It's just basically what we would call one-directional trading. Some people will argue that that's a gap of kind, where you haven't had an opportunity for the market to really explore the levels. I think you can always find reasons why the market would do one thing or another thing. I am perhaps at this stage in my career more inclined to believe that the market can do absolutely anything, and as a result of it I use more mechanical setups to ensure that I am in the right direction of the market if it does indeed move. Today, though, it does feel as if, what does they say in poker? Patsy. The 10-minute chart, I think, is interesting because you've seen pretty consistently buyers below prior bar low. Okay, this was a deep retracement. And you've seen sellers above prior bar high. Sellers immediately above prior bar high. So the really interesting thing for me now is, are we going to see a real breakdown now, or will the pattern that was established about 3 or 4 10-minute bars ago prevail? Are we going to see buyers below? Because if we have to go all the way down here, then I for sure will get stopped out. So if I wasn't in a position and I was following this pattern, I would be a buyer of the DAX here at 390. And then I would probably have a stop loss at 375. So right now we are below prior bar low. And the reason why I would be a buyer here is because the pattern that I see is a trading range. I think it was Al Brooks who wrote about it in one of his books. It was the book about trading range. He says that when you are in a trading range, you kind of have to flip your mindset to go, you see a positive bar and you have to sell. And you see a negative bar and you have to buy. So the basis on this, I think I'll cancel my short order. Cancel my flip the switch order. Because I'm really concerned about this market just being in a trading range. Let me just delete that. So looking at this pragmatically, starting with the 10-minute chart, the DAX did indeed go below this low. And hopefully we're going to see you move back up to 410. I am uncomfortably close to my stop loss being filled. And of course, looking at the 15-minute chart, thoughts of, should I be short here, are emerging. So been stopped out. Only almost an hour and a half into the session. In about 23 minutes, I would have a setup which is called the brunch break. So not a very good morning for me. Lost on the DAX and didn't get any profits out of the FTSE. So it would seem that I would have to experience the market take out the range, pick up whatever orders that was below, including mine, and the market is now motoring back into the trading range. I can say with some degree of certainty that when a 15-minute candle breaks the range, as we're seeing here, if the high of that candle at the time of the break is exceeded, then the odds are good that the market will move higher. What that means is that if we see the DAX trade at 18,400 again, it significantly supports the argument that we would go back up to the top of the trading range. Here's a 10-minute chart of the same. The high is currently 96.4. In about 1 minute, this bar is going to close. And if you see this market go above this high by about 2 or 3 points, then it is indeed a buy signal with a stop loss below the low. So that's what's happening now. I'm buying the DAX here. It's currently trading at 18,399. I'm going to put a stop loss at 18,368. It's quiet, surprisingly so. This is the FTSE index. In approximately 8 minutes, the current 15-minute bar will close. That's a signal bar, and if the highs of that is broken and my position is in profit, then I will look to add to my DAX. The current low of this 15-minute is 385. I will move my stop loss to below that. Just going to type that in Telegram. This bar will finish in 4 minutes. I'm just going to take a very, very quick break. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so the current 15-minute bar will close in approximately, well, shortly. That would call for a short position at 81 and a long position at 408. I'd love to see that break because break above. But with two losing trades, sorry, with one losing trade, and if I was to get stopped out at 82, I think I would call it a morning and say, you know what, my trading doesn't tend to have two losing trades in a row. And it would just feel to me as if I was chasing the market, and I don't want to do that. It sets in motion all sorts of emotional imbalance. So I'll just put it down to, right, the market didn't know what the hell it wanted to do. And so the best thing for me would be to step back. If it was to happen. Of course, the opposite could also happen. The DAX could actually take out the highs at 405. And then I would add to my position at 408. But I feel that it's a fair assessment to say that this market is not in a rush to do anything. And so maybe more time needs to be spent in this trading range waiting for the US markets to open. Which is plausible. I'll give this another few minutes. 10 minutes, I think. Then I have been streaming for a couple of hours. Just having a look at the FTSE. FTSE on the 10-minute chart is looking okay. Okay, so stand by in the DAX to add. It will be at 409. So I've just written here in Telegram what I'm doing. Getting ready to add to DAX at 18409. But if I do, the stop on the first entry goes to 18493. E too many. There we go. Okay. Good morning. So the high is 495.9. Maybe I should use a 4-point offset, but I will stick to 3. So I'm now long twice in the DAX. Maybe this time it'll break. Making new highs for the morning. Is this just top of the trading range? Or do you think we're going to see some momentum build now? I want to show you the 30-minute chart. It's sort of it's a belief from here onward, isn't it? Is you believe it's going to go, or you're going to go, no, I'm going to take my profit. Breakout traders will enter the long market now. Range traders would say, this is it. We're selling short here. One thing that I always do, rightly or wrongly, I always look at the FTSE and I go, what is the FTSE doing? Is it participating? Does it think that the DAX is going to run because then it perhaps too would be inclined to run? I have a terrible track record with that approach because the FTSE is in its own little world. So I can't offer you anything. Just, hey, I know it's the top of the trading range. This is a 30-minute chart you're looking at. Excuse me. I'm moving my stop loss to break even on my first entry. Move my stop loss to 397 on the second entry. Maybe they should just be the same place. It went as high as 418. Currently 415. I imagine that because it's still here, that we are going to see higher prices. Looking at the Dow and the Nasdaq, they're very strong. FTSE, however, is not doing anything. Sorry, I made a typo. It should be 393. Just in the heat. Typed 493. Thank you. Someone has just asked if they could turn on this software. I haven't installed this software on this laptop. FTSE is retreating. DAX is just waiting. I guess it's okay to hope. At least that's what I argue in my book, that it's okay to hope when you are in profit. It's not so good to hope when you are losing. Just to emphasize here, I am absolutely mindful that this is a trading range now, and I have 2 long positions going in the DAX. I take full responsibility for what's happening. I am betting on a push above that trading range, and I do that because I see how strong America is, and also how strong Europe is today. Should I get stopped out, I will tell myself, well, You did what you had set out to do. I won't lose on my first position, but unfortunately I will lose 12 points on my second entry. And that would be it for me this morning. It's toying with us. Oh, I'm going to have to stop the streaming now because I actually have to get ready. I've been trading for just a little over 2 hours and I'm waiting for the DAX to break higher. I don't really want to close my position. Don't really want to do a strip show in front of the camera either, as I'm getting changed. I think I will terminate the stream now. My position is quite clear. I'm long the DAX twice. One is 10 points in profit, 11, 12. The other one is 3 points in profit. I am down on the morning by 38 points. I will inform you via Telegram if I won't add to it, but I may take profit. Although I prefer to let this run if we are seeing a break above this area. Just don't know how far it will go, but I imagine that it could have some legs. I'll show you the hourly chart. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, that there could be quite a lot of upside. The DAX is right here at this point here where we saw resistance. And now it's just a philosophy of, do you think it'll break through or not? I think it will, and therefore I am long. Maybe it won't. Okay, it has been a pleasure to trade with you live this morning. I'm going to stop streaming now. At this point here, my position is approximately 15, 16, 17 points plus 5 about 23 points, 22 points in profit. I would love to see at least my loss being eradicated, but it doesn't quite work like that, does it? So I'll see you later. All the best. Thank you very much for this morning. Bye-bye.